Hi guys, thanks for joining us again this week. This week we've gone to Canada. We're talking to a therapist from Ontario, a gentleman by the name of Rob Haddow. Now Rob incorporates a lot of corrective exercise, or REMEX as they refer to it, remedial exercise, and it's part of their training in Canada. So very interesting story, very interesting gentleman. So enjoy, leave any comments below. Rob Haddow. Am I pronouncing that correct? Haddow?
Yeah, you're doing better than most. Haddow, yeah.
Yep. Rob Haddow from Ontario in Canada. Thank you very much for agreeing to sit down and have a chat with me today about what you do and what's going on in the eastern side of Canada.
Yeah.
Right. How long have you been in the soft tissue / rehab industry?
Oh God, started school in 2005, so I guess 15 years if we want to look at it then.
And that
And I've
was
been self-employed for about 12 of them.
you started out as a massage therapist, or you started out in the rehab?
We do both here. It's a joint thing.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so massage therapists here have REMEX included in their scope, and so that is physical. Those are physical therapies, physical therapy exercises.
Yep. I find that interesting because I know in a lot of states in America, it's not part of their training. It's outside of their scope of practice.
Yeah, I've run into that. I'm on a bunch of U.S. groups as well, and it certainly changes how I have to advise people if I'm consulting with them.
Yeah. We have a similar setup over here, whereby if you do your diploma of remedial massage, there is a little bit of corrective exercise in that training package. But if you go on and do your advanced diploma, there is a lot more rehab type stuff in that package, which I found to be much more useful.
What was the program there?
There's 3 levels of training. There's what's called a Certificate 4 in massage, which is basically a therapeutic / relaxation massage. So that allows you to work in a day spa or a beautician, something like that. You don't get any health fund benefits or rebates available on those ones. That's usually about a 12-month course.
Okay.
Then you go on and do the cert. So that's the Cert 4. Then you go on and do your diploma, which can be anywhere from 18 months to 24 months in training. And that allows you to assess, treat, reassess, get health fund rebates, and you can practice in your own clinic by yourself. And then you can go on, if you want, and do what's called the Advanced Diploma in Health Science, which also includes a lot more myofascial stuff, a lot more neural assessments, a lot of corrective exercise and rehab exercise, and that's another 12 months on that again. There's no university degree at this stage, but one of the problems we have over here, and it is a problem, is that we don't have a national association. We have a number of associations throughout the country. And that creates issues, particularly at the moment when the government doesn't know what we do, and we all have to close down, and then each state government has opened us up at various stages. So I'm hoping that all of this will bring some sort of positive result where we can get some sort of national association and national recognition alongside other allied health professionals. So what's the situation with you guys over there at the moment?
Not terribly dissimilar. We have it's done province by province. Some provinces are regulated, some aren't. So my province, Ontario, is a regulated one. We have a standard 2,000-hour program that's universal across the board. So if you're a massage therapist, you have to finish that minimum program. Some schools go a little bit above and beyond. Like mine was a bit different. It was a 3,000-hour program with a bit more focus on REMX and biomechanics, and it was kind of a hybrid program. But we are running into something similar with the lack of understanding as to what's in scope or what we have the capacity to do, where there are different alternative healthcare professions that are being funded right now, or they're allowed to practice via what we call telehealth, but massage isn't isn't recognized by some insurance providers. So I was actually contacted with one of my patients today, and she's letting me know that her insurance provider won't cover massage therapy, but will cover manual osteopathy right now for telehealth. And I was like, that's funny, because manual osteopaths don't learn anything about rehabilitative exercises or movement-based assessment, as I understand. Their entire premise is hands-on. And massage therapists are taught visual assessment and remedial exercise prescription, and we aren't being supported like that. So there's a bit of a disconnect between what we can do and what the optics are of what we do.
How are you guys viewed from the other allied health professionals? Say osteopathy. I know in the States they call them physical therapists. We call them physiotherapists over here. I don't know what the term in Canada is.
It depends on where you go. By and large, I've found that when I've worked with other professionals, they've been surprised at what I am familiar with, the kind of cases I work with. I tend to work with a lot of high-level athletes or a lot of really messy injuries. I like the cases where it's difficult to assess what happened. It's difficult to figure out what's relevant to that person, and then you have to work around that, solve the puzzle, and plan it out. And the only way to find out if you're on the right track is if they do indeed get better. I love those cases. And so when I talk to other colleagues about working on those, they're like, you've seen a brachial plexus avulsion, or you have someone who's been crushed by a helicopter? I'm like, well, yeah. I love cases like that, and I get referrals for cases like that. Like, oh, we just thought massage therapists just kind of to do this. Or one physio I was talking to, she said, oh, I just kind of tell my massage therapist what I need them to do, and then they follow my instructions. And I was like, ooh, that is a massage therapist who either did not pay any attention in school and did not continue studying afterwards, or who just doesn't give a rat's ass and is just making a paycheck and going home. And so, yeah, there's that. But then there's the other side of it. Some of them I work with are incredible. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, you just do whatever you want on your side. I've worked with enough good RMTs. I know what you guys are capable of, and I vetted you ahead of time. And so you get your give and take.
Yeah, I find it interesting. We have the similar thing over here, where if you are working alongside a physio or an osteo who has worked in a team environment where they know that you wouldn't be there if you didn't know what you were doing. And it's not a case of just go and rub that hammy for me, will you? It's like, no, that's not what I do. You know,
yeah.
As a colleague of mine always says, you can teach a monkey to rub, you can't teach a monkey to think critically and assess what's going on.
Well, yeah, and I mean, when you've caught your first splenic rupture or something like that, and the person goes, "Oh crap, how did you catch that?" You're like, "Pulse pressure narrowing. It's assessments 101." They go, "Oh, we didn't know that you learned that." I'm like, "Well, we're healthcare professionals. We're supposed to learn basic first aid. And we're supposed to learn basic assessments, and we're supposed to learn about not killing our patients. Come on." And so, yeah, there is definitely a big disconnect with what people think we do and what we do.
Yeah.
But then again, when you look at, I mean, the fact that you had to ask me what it's like over here, whereas if you were a chiropractor and I was a chiropractor, we wouldn't have had that discussion.
No, that's right.
That's the problem.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. You go to Florida, and I can't remember what their education standard is. I think it's 250 hours or something. or you go to different states and it varies from like 100 hours to 1,000 hours. There's this huge variance in capacity of treatment, in scope of practice. And I think it's pretty reasonable that people don't know what we do at that point, because a lot of us don't even know what we do.
Ain't that the truth? I know when the Sydney 2000 Olympics were on here, and we had 4,500 applications for, I think, 350 massage therapy positions. And
Yep.
those 4,500 applications, they had to give us their training, what their training results. And it was interesting that some people just were back then, 6 weekends, and they get classified as a remedial therapist. And then other people were doing, 2 years full time, 5 days a week, solid training. And it just showed the vast, as you said, disconnect between what person A has done and what person, but it's still being called a remedial therapist. And the number of people that just rub, where people say, I've got a sore back, I'll get on the table. What are you going to rub? And why are you going to rub?
Yeah. And did you check to make sure that when you work on that person, they won't experience ill effects? Do you have a plan for CCFs? Things like that. Yep.
So when you finished your training, did you feel as though when you first went out, the first week in the big wide world, did you feel as though your training was adequate once people started knocking on your door?
Kind of a yes and no answer there, actually. That's a terrible question. That's a hard question. Okay, so yeah, for a lot of the minimum standards, yes. I mean, I felt like I could treat and rule out the big stuff. I felt like I was, safe enough to know what I was doing. I mean, between my school in class and my placements in school, it was 4,000 hours. I would hope I would come out of that with some knowledge of what I'm doing. But at the same time, I mean, my mentor gave me this like speech before I graduated and said, you're a really smart guy, and you have the highest marks in your class. You're really bright. When you get out of here, you're going to realize you know nothing and you're just an idiot. School here is your start. This is you learn your bare minimum here. You should be able to work and not kill people. From there, you're going to become a good or bad therapist as you keep putting in the work. And I'm like, well, thanks for the vote of confidence, jackass. But he was right. He was completely right. And so when I got out and started working, I felt like I knew everything, and very quickly realized that a lot of stuff I thought I knew was my head was up my ass, really. So, yeah, it was a good reality check. It was a bit of an ego check, but it was a good reality check.
And it's interesting. I've met lots of people who have never actually come to that realization. They know what they know, and that's it. There is no more. I don't need to learn anymore. Whereas you know what you don't know, it's a big eye opener, and you need to do ongoing study. I mean, I've always aligned myself with physiotherapists. The physios that I have worked with and alongside have always been hands-on physios, not just giving corrective exercises and do this stretch, do that. They actually touch people and assess and that. So, which has been a big bonus.
Some people who are very against that. Some very vocal antagonists to that approach in the physio field right now.
We had that over here about probably 15 years ago. And what came out of that was another degree called exercise physiology. And these guys only do corrective exercise and rehab exercise. That's all they do. And I work with an excellent one who most of his work is with Parkinson's sufferers and diabetics.
Yep.
But he also knows that, you know, if I've sent someone along to him, I've taken them as far as I'm comfortable with my skill set, but I know they need more. Go and see Michael. And by the same token, he also refers people back that need soft tissue work rather than just say, go and see your physio, because he knows that most of them are just going to give them an exercise that he's probably already given them anyway. So yeah, it's interesting how that demarcation in some places can be quite delineated, I guess, rather than working together and getting that crossover and doing the right thing and looking for the right outcome for your patients and your clients. Which is always interesting.
It's one of the nice things about having a really broad scope, right? I mean, one of the nice things about the massage therapy scope, and I think Ontario, New Brunswick, BC, I don't remember, there's a fourth province that has a scope similar to ours, is that we basically have the same kind of scope as a physiotherapist or chiropractor, with the exception of a couple of controlled acts. And so that makes things a lot easier. And once you get to know each other, it takes a lot of the ego out of it, which is nice. And you just all get to say, listen, I just don't know what's going on. Can you help me? Yeah. Or, you know, here's what I think you're missing. Maybe let's try this. And that ability to not have that demarcation can be helpful sometimes.
Case conferencing.
Yeah. That's something I miss. I've been working solo for a little over a decade now.
Right.
And I do miss doing that because I used to work in a team atmosphere. It was a little toxic, but there were a couple of people in the team that were actually pretty good to work with, and it was fun.
Yeah.
For that exact reason.
I think when you're in those sort of situations, I know a lot of people aren't because they don't particularly want to work in that environment, and that's nothing wrong with that. But I found for my own personal ongoing training and ongoing education, you get so much out of conferencing with other therapists. We have a podiatrist here, and you know, it's interesting when you get something that's a bit weird, and if he's got 2 minutes in between his patients, he'll come in, or you'll sit down there and we'll have a coffee if we've got a joint break, and have coffee and discuss this person or that person and how they're going, and you know, what's the treatment protocol for this and that. And the education that you gain from that, I think, is, for me anyway, is a lot more relevant than going to a conference once a year and having a tasting of this and a tasting of that from different presenters. Interesting. What would you say has been your greatest achievement professionally so far?
I don't know. Never thought about that. I liked teaching when I was doing that. That was fun. I've had some fun and interesting cases where I've caught some pathologies that it turned out were medically significant. That was always interesting. I'm getting more into writing now, so that's definitely a new hurdle for me. But I don't know that I have anything where I'm like, oh, this is my crowning achievement, or this is my big thing. I've only been doing it for 10 years. I'm still a novice. So get back to me in like two more decades. Give me 2 decades, and I will have a magnum opus of some sort. Right, yeah. I hope.
So what are you writing?
Okay, I took on a contract recently to write a course on connective tissue, hypermobility, connective tissue disorders, and treatment considerations. Been doing some blogs on cross-training for different types of athletes while they're social distancing. So maintaining conditioning for overhead ranges of motion for athletes, for throwing athletes, swimming athletes, things like that. On off-axis ranges of motion for running athletes. Like if you're if you're an Aussie football player, going out for a run isn't going to meet your needs for training. Even getting out to the field isn't going to do a lot of that. There are exercises that you need to explore to challenge the ranges of motion that you're going to experience when you take a hit, or when you have to deke out and run through a fur wall of people. And so one of the blogs I wrote was just going through the hip, knee, and ankle of that for range of motion for the joints, for resistance levels of motion across the joints, and for rate of acceleration, deceleration on and off axis. So a lot more. It's a little bit more niche, but given the number of people who are involved in running sports of various types, it is relevant right now.
Absolutely. I remember years ago I was working with a football team, rugby league team over here, and every Tuesday night the coach would send the whole team out on a 5K road run. And I said to him one night, I said, "Why are you sending them all out on a road run? All they have to run in the game." I said, "Well, how far does a forward run in a game? Maybe 3 meters, maybe 5 meters. He might do it 20 or 30 times. So aren't you better off training them in that short burst rather than a 5 kilo road run?" But he was old school. School trainer, coach. So some people you just can't have the discussion with.
I have dealt with those exact types with American rules football for the same reason. And if you're not taking a bunch of your athletes to throwing up, you haven't done a good job as a coach. I'm like, I would just like to state for the record that the evidence shows that is disadvantageous to an athlete. Well, my coaches did it. I'm going to do it. Okay, well.
Yeah, that's how I was trained. Yeah. I have a swim coach that I see from time to time. And I was discussing coaching regimes with him a while ago. And I said, I don't understand why swimmers have to go and swim 3, 4, 5 kilometers, 3, 4, 5 times a week when they might be doing, 100-meter butterfly. And he said, "That's not how I coach my people." He said, "I coach them like track athletes. If they are sprinters, they train sprint. If they're long distance, they train a long distance." And he said, "I get the results." And he's a really interesting guy to talk to, because he said that he was looking at that 10 years ago. Why do we train swimmers like this when we look at track athletes and we don't train them like that? So
that's the thing. I mean, the progression in evidence applied to coaching in swimming and actually track over the last few decades has been ridiculous. It's amazing the change if you have up-to-date coaching from one generation to the next right now. I was talking to a friend of mine. He was a 2-time Olympian for 200-meter. I can't remember what. I think it was freestyle. Freestyle or butterfly. I think it was butterfly. Because we were talking about shoulder range of motion. And he's like, yeah, it's crazy. If I knew 10 years ago, 15 years ago when I was training, what I know now about training, I would have been such a better athlete, because I'm still making times that are almost as good as my best times. And I swim less and I train in the gym more. And I never thought that would be important like that. And it's the fact that he's cross-training more and he's building up a lot of that other stuff, that strength. He's like, when I cut the water now, I feel like the water is lighter. I feel like I just cut right through it like it's nothing. Whereas before it used to feel heavier because I was only focusing on swimming and not making myself absolutely stronger. And it's crazy how much the coaching has changed in some of those sports.
Yeah. And all for the better too, which is a good thing.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. What do you do to switch off from work?
I don't actually switch off from work very well.
That's called being self-employed.
Well, yeah, there's that. But I have a connective tissue disease. So the stuff I do at work, the reason I'm good at figuring it out the way I do is because it's what I've been doing with myself since I was a child. And so when I get home from work, I still have to think about that. When I wake up in the morning, I have to think about that. It's not applied to patients, it's applied to me. But it's the same damn thing. And so it's kind of always in the back of my mind, which is great for a professional setting like this because I get to sound smart or professional or clever or something. But it's not the greatest for relaxing and letting my hair down, so to speak, and turning it off.
It'll happen in another 2 decades, as you said.
Oh, shit. Okay, good. That sounds super reasonable.
I was forced to close down a month ago. I've been doing this for 31 years now. And having 4.5 weeks off
Yeah.
with nothing to do. I won't say nothing to do. This is why I started these conversations, because I needed to find something to do.
Same reason I started writing. I totally get that.
Yeah, and I don't know where I was going with that now. Yeah,
31 years switching off.
Yeah, switching off. Now that I'm back, albeit not full time, I'm only doing 3 days a week at the moment because of the gapping in between clients and all of that. And I was driving into work this morning thinking I could learn to like this, just working 3 days a week. I have to learn how to adapt to the loss of income for those other 2.5 days. But
yeah.
One of the things I said to my partner earlier on the week, that I was thinking about doing some online study, and it was like, oh, my head's not in the right place for it at the moment. I'm just going to leave that aside and just keep doing these and get back into the clinic and just get back to working for a little while. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Been there, done that, still doing it sometimes. Actually, my partner went out last night with some girlfriends, and she said, what are you going to do? And I was sitting at the computer doing some stuff, and she said, you're not going to sit there all night working, are you? I said, oh, well, it's got to be done, you know. If I don't do it tonight, I've got to do it tomorrow. So I'd rather do it tonight, and I can sit and enjoy a beer while I'm doing it and switch off eventually.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you coping with COVID-19?
A little stressful. Generally pretty well overall. In terms of social distancing and the isolation, it's not that wasn't a very big deal for a while for me. That's kind of actually in my comfort zone. I've had a lot of injuries over my life, so I've had to kind of remove myself from social circles for moderate to prolonged periods. So this is kind of, it's almost like I've practiced for that. But still the stress of, okay, I know there's not a lot of cases around here, but if I do catch it, I'm technically immune compromised. So what's my emergency action plan for that? And do I have my affairs in order? And so keeping that at least in the background in my head, that is a bit of a drain.
Yeah. Is it, I have a very good friend who moved over to Texas last year, and they can't believe how your southern neighbour is dealing with this situation. Is the general public in Canada on board with the rules and regulations that have been put in place over there?
It seems to be hit and miss, actually. I speak to some people and they say, oh, yeah, no, I don't care. I believe it's a hoax anyway. You have that conspiracy theorist attitude. Yeah, I have an anti-vaccine neighbor who, she swears she knows the guy who invented flu vaccines, and he told her it's all a hoax anyway, and that there's no worries that she won't get sick with this because she already got sick in December and she's immune now. So you have your crazies, but you also do have at least your proponents of evidence and planning for worst case scenario. I mean, you can't really afford to second guess that when the worst case scenario is such an unacceptable loss factor. Yeah. So we do see a better acceptance of that than in the States, especially because the politicians here, they've provided or presented a united front, whereas in the US they have a truly willfully ignorant group in the White House pushing God knows what one day or the next. Yeah. And then all of your different states running their own rules because they've just got no leadership. So at least here there's a unified front and there is consensus, and so the people, even the ignorant people, still have to listen.
And hopefully they'll take it on board at some point.
We'll see, yeah.
Thanks very much for giving me some time. And I hope everything does pan out for you over there. Are you putting your blogs on your website?
Yes, I am. I'm putting them on after they get published.
Yep.
And although my website is terrible, I don't do web stuff very well at all. I'm trying to learn to do that better. That is on my list of things to do, but it's still a low priority. But yes, they will be going up on there.
I'll be interested. I'll put the link below of your website so people can have a look. And
All right.
I must pass comment on I think it's the second sentence on your homepage where you tell people you do not play Enya and you do not have nature sounds in the clip, which I just love because nothing drives me to drink more than whale noises and waterfalls. But I want you to fix me. I'm not here to relax. You know?
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, it's all good. All right, Rob, thanks very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your evening over there. It's nearly 8 o'clock, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And
All
thanks
right,
very much. I thoroughly enjoyed this, Laurie. It was nice to meet you.
All right, mate. Thank you. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, mate. Take
Okay, thanks very much, Rob. Great to have a chat to you, and it was really interesting to hear how the training is done in your part of the world, on the eastern side of Canada. Guys, if you've got any comments, questions, or anything you'd like to know, leave your comments below. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, and we'll be back next week with Meet Another Therapist. So stay safe, do what you do. Cheers, guys. Thank you.